Hello and welcome to a video about how to run a linear regression and find your residuals on an older TI operating system. So this is the type of operating system where you don't get, where you don't get this nice fancy little thing going on that tells you, hey, this is the order that you need to put things in. So let's go ahead and do that. And so we have our data right here. We're going to work on hours studied versus exam scores. So we're going to use hours studied as the explanatory variable and exam scores as the response variable. Go ahead and pause the video and take the time to enter your data. So you're going to go stats, edit, and you're going to enter your data in. I've already entered mine in, so that we don't have to watch me do that. So go ahead and pause your video now to enter in your data. Okay, welcome back to having entered your data. So what we want to do is the first thing that we'd like to do is we'd like to see, is this data worthy to be a linear equation? I.e., is it acting in a linear fashion, or is it acting in some other fashion where we shouldn't run a linear regression on it? So we want to actually make a scatter plot on this. So we're going to go second stat plot, and if all of my stat plots are on, you can go ahead and hit 4 to turn them off and press enter, and then it'll just turn them off so that you don't have to deal with it yourself. The next thing you want to do is you want to go to your y equals, and you want to clear out anything that's in here. So if you have anything in here, you can just hit clear and enter, or if you want to keep it in there and you just don't want it, you can toggle over to the y equals and just hit enter, and then it won't be luminate. So if I had let's say 2. So if I had y equals 2 in there and I didn't want it on anymore, you can see that it's highlighted. I can toggle over, hit enter, and now it's no longer highlighted. So it's still in there, but it's not highlighted anymore. So I don't want that, so I'm going to clear it out. Okay, now I want to see my scatter plot of my data. So I'm going to go second stat plot and turn on the first one. I know we just turned them all off, but it makes it easier for ourselves. So we're going to toggle over to on. And which type would I like? I would like a scatter plot, which is my first one. I'm good. I'm going to make sure that my lists are correct. If they're not, you're going to find your lists down here between or above 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. The number corresponds with which number list you're looking for. So just to show you, if this was wrong, I would go second L1, and then that works, and second L2, and there we go. The mark is, what do you want it to look like when you graph it? Okay, what I want to do next is I want to take a look at it. So I don't know what my window is going to look like, and if I just hit graph right away, it may or may not graph nicely. So I'm going to go to zoom, and I want zoom stats, and I don't see it right away, but I'll give you a hint. It's actually under number 9. My finger is hurt, so I'm not going to toggle down to it, but you can just trust me. So instead of toggling down to it, I'm going to press 9, and it takes me right to zoom stats, and there is a scatter plot. If you want to know what window it built, you can go and hit window, and you can see what numbers it chose for you. So here we go. There's my graph of all of my stuff, and you can make it nice for yourself or whatever you want to do for Windows, or under Windows. So there we go, and now I want to, so it looks like it's in a linear fashion. There's no crazy swoop or anything going on. The data isn't particularly bunched up in any sort of way, and it doesn't have any huge gap. So it seems like a good candidate for running a linear regression. Okay, so we're going to go to stats to actually run our linear regression, and I'd like to calculate the linear regression. So I'm going to come down, and this first one, number 4, is where I want to calculate my linear regression. So let's hit enter, and notice it doesn't pull up that nice screen, so I need to tell it what I want to run the linear regression on. So first you need to tell it what your x's are on, and I'm going to remind myself that this is list 1 and list 2. So I want under list 1, and now you need to put a comma. So your comma is right here above the 7 button, or it should be right next to your parentheses, wherever those are, if you're not on a TI83. So I'm on a TI83plus. If you're on a TI84, I'm pretty sure it's in the same spot. And yeah, so comma, and now I need my y variable, or my y's, so L2, so I want second L2. And if I just want to run it, that's it, I'm done. If I'd like to store it, I can do one more thing, so I'm going to hit comma, and this is how I want to store it. To store it, I need to go to variables, because I'd like to store it under these y equals. So I'm going to hit variables, and I want it stored as a y variable. So I'm going to toggle over to the y variable, and I want it stored as a function. So I'm going to hit enter to store it as a function, and this is where would you like to store it. So if you went under here under the y equals and you turn something off instead of clearing it out, make sure that you don't store it in the same place where you had something already stored. For me, I cleared everything out, so it doesn't matter which function I store it under, but I'm going to store it under the first one because it just makes it easier. So I'm going to hit enter. So when you do this, it should look like lenreg, which lenreg you picked, L1, comma, L2, so my X, where I put my X, comma, where I put my Y, and then if you want to store it, comma, go to variables and where you want to store it. And now we're just going to hit enter, and there is my linear regression. Now notice that I don't have my diagnostic turned on this particular calculator, and so I don't have my correlation coefficient is missing. I don't have my R or my R squared. To turn on your R and your R squared, you can go to mode, and I don't actually know if it works under here. Well, let's see. Oh, no, it's not. Okay, so I couldn't remember if that worked for this one or not. So what we want to actually do is quit out of this, and we want to go to catalog down here. So sorry, you can do mode for the newer operating systems. You go second catalog, and notice how it's already in alpha, and I want to go down to diagnostic. So instead of scrolling all the way down to D, I'm going to jump start myself to D by pressing the D button right here. Do you see the D button next to your matrix button above your X to the -1 button? All right, and now we have to scroll down to diagnostic on. There we go, not diagnostic off, but diagnostic on. We're gonna hit enter, and then we're gonna hit enter again to actually turn it on. Now if we run it again, stats, calculate, linear regression, L1, comma, L2. I've already stored it, so I'm not gonna store it a second time. And now I have my R and my R squared, which is my correlation coefficient. My R is my correlation coefficient. Okay, let's write it down for ourselves. So, ooh, wow. Y hat is equal to 3.62 X plus 60.16, about, I rounded. And then my R squared is 0.676, and my R is about, 0.822. Okay, and that concludes this video. Tune in for your next video to see how to run the hypothesis test on the same type of operating system.